Have you ever wanted to dive deeper into the horror movies you love? Beyond the Blood is a horror podcast for fans who want more than just surface level screams. We do deep dives into the movies that shaped us, digging into director commentaries, behind the scenes stories, deleted scenes, and the special features that most people skip. Each episode is a love letter to the genre. We break down how these films were made, the creative risks that paid off or didn't, and the lasting impact they've had on the genre as a whole. From 70s slashers to modern nightmares, we celebrate the craft, chaos, and characters that keep us coming back. If you're the kind of fan who rewatches movies with the commentary on, or you simply grew up in the video store horror aisle, the Beyond the Blood podcast was made for you. New episodes every single week. Subscribe, and let's dig deep. Welcome to the Beyond the Blood podcast.
Hello there, I'm Chris Stashew.
And I'm Jess Byard.
We are the hosts of the One Season Show, a show where we take a look at TV shows that only lasted one season.
Each month we tackle several episodes from the show, and this month we continue our trek into the village with The Prisoner. Kicking off episodes 12 and 13, Hammer into Anvil, and Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling. Clementine.
What a title. What a title indeed. So Hammer into Anvil aired December 10th, 1967. It's directed by Pat Jackson, written by Roger Woodis. Number 2 is played by Patrick Cargill. This episode would find number 6 vowing revenge on number 2, and he essentially gaslights him the entire episode.
Yep.
That's it. That's almost it. Like it's I actually find it to be a pretty decent episode of the show, because it, in my opinion, it is an interesting table turn on the character of number 2.
Yeah, it's much more of a number 2 focused episode, and kind of like the episodes we talked about before where there were 2 number 2s. We are seeing a bit more of that happening, where we're starting to get, I guess as we're going along, we're seeing number 2 getting kind of broken down as well, in this whole, quest for information and to break down number 6. Each number 2 seems to be getting a little bit more splintered, mentally, and it's strange. They seem to be getting angrier and like more violent, or more tending towards violence
and sadism
than they were at the beginning. Like at the beginning we were getting some just kind of like cheeky fun, quirky number 2, and now we're getting a much more like, all right, I'm starting to get fucking pissed off at number 6, and I guess they're bringing in their more lethal number 2s, but not that it matters anyway, because
yeah, no, it's an interesting episode because again it shifts the focus away from number 6, and I honestly, with the episodes that are in this home stretch of the show, almost all of the episodes are straying away from number 6 being the focus. Not to kind of give away the the cow ahead of the milk, but like pretty much every episode from here on out is going to be less focused on number 6, which is
right.
Interesting because up until this point they've been pretty much number 6 focused only.
Well, and so here is something interesting, because I was, while I was reading and researching about some of these episodes and reading more about The Prisoner, Patrick McGoohan had initially only wanted this series. He had planned for basically a 7-episode series. And he had the 7 episodes planned out, and basically the managing director for ITC at the time, Lou Grade, wanted to sell it to American markets, but American markets demanded 26 episodes.
He also demanded it be in color.
Yes. Patrick McGoohan couldn't come up with 26 episodes, so they compromised on 17. So 10 of these episodes are what Patrick McGoohan effectively refers to as padding episodes and filler episodes. And their whole purpose, I guess, is to keep he wanted to make sure that all of these filler episodes kept the theme of violence not being the answer effectively. He wants and that comes into play a little bit more later on in the series, but that kind of just leads me to wonder which episodes were the original 7 that Patrick McGoohan had planned.
Well, we know that the last 2 are more than likely part of that, and the first
right,
one,
and the first
so that's
one.
3. Probably the other episode with Leo McKern, who is going to reprise his role as number 3 2 more times, the second to last and the last episode of the show. So that would be 4. The question then becomes, what are the other 3? I think this might be one of them. This is a fairly interesting episode that doesn't feel like padding.
Right. It feels like, okay, we have a purpose here where we're focusing. It's more like number 6 is subverting internally than trying to escape himself. And so, like I was mentioning earlier, we are seeing this progression of each number 2 becoming more agitated and quick to, I guess, be violent, which if one of the themes that Patrick McGoohan was trying to push for is that, violence doesn't pay off in the end, is then I guess as we see number 2 become increasingly more violent and more volatile, his plans or her plans fail even more spectacularly.
Right. And I mean, again, with this episode, like you said, normally we do see number 6 trying to escape. And in this episode, not only do we not see him trying to escape, he is actively trying to convince them that he is without actually trying to. Which is really interesting, I think, as an episode of the show. Because it subverts the audience's expectations on top of everything else.
Sorry, I'm having a microphone issue. Hold on. All right, there we go. Yeah, I think that this episode it's different enough from the, filler episodes that we have seen that it does kind of rekindle an interest. But ultimately I still feel like this episode is it's just another episode that's trying to do too much.
Wow. I mean, almost every episode of the show is trying to do way too much.
Yeah, and there is a lot of, as we go on, there is a whole lot of, identity switching and things happening.
Oh, Jesus. It just gets worse and
worse.
Which
gets worse and makes it even more convoluted. And I mean, you can just tell how convoluted it is if you go in and read any of the episode descriptions in Wikipedia. You'll read sentences that are like, and then number 2 does this and turns number 6 and does number 5. And it's just, as we're referring to everybody.
Nonsensical.
And the fact that we're referring to everyone as numbers does make it, harder to remember who's who, aside from number 6 and number 2 always being, the number 6 is always the same and number 2 is always established.
Right.
But everybody else is just kind of like coming in and out.
Yeah, again, ultimately for this episode, it delivered on what I wanted, which was a subversion of my expectations. Did it subvert them enough for me to consider this an interesting episode? Yes, I think the issue with this episode really is that it has come way too late in the run of the show.
Right, and if, this is really just supposed to be 7 episodes, then I don't know where this would have fit in the probably, some way in the midway point, I would imagine.
Which, if you think about that, I mean, that's 10 episodes of this show. That's 10 hours of programming that are completely being admittedly said are a waste.
Yeah, just because all because they wanted to sell it to American markets, and because American markets were, as we've talked about on this show, were shows like I Dream of Jeannie and Gilligan's Island and all this stuff that were sitcoms and quick to make and, limited sets. So they made tons of episodes each season. They were cheap to make and they did them that way. So that's how they marketed all their television. And if you wanted to sell something overseas, you had to adhere to those markets. And yeah, it effectively, he forced this. I do feel badly for Patrick McGoohan creatively in this show. And I understand, as we go forward and get closer to the end and your story of, our friend Father Malone, seeing him in a bar and being told not to bring up the prisoner at all because he'll leave. I can understand why, because if he had an actual vision for something this transformative and something this,
even as a failure, it's still an important TV show. Yeah,
even this, it's high concept television in an era where high concept television did not exist.
Other than Star Trek.
Exactly. And if he had an actual vision and had written 7 episodes that told a story and the story he wanted and conveyed the themes he wanted, it probably would have been really, really, really interesting. And
hello and welcome to Tumbleweeds and TV Cowboys. My name is Hunter. In this podcast, I'll be joined by a different guest each week to discuss a classic Western movie or TV show. I've been a fan of classic Westerns for as long as I can remember, and in recent years, they've become very nostalgic for me. I love the aesthetic, the tropes, and I love seeing different filmmakers' takes on them. At their best, they're incredibly entertaining, rewatchable, and some of my all-time favorite movies are Westerns. We'll mostly focus on Western movies made in Hollywood, but we'll also be covering spaghetti Westerns, and one thing I'm very excited to get into are Western TV shows. I've got some amazing guests coming on the show, film professors, historians, and podcasters. And Tumbleweeds and TV Cowboys is part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network, and many guests on the show will be from other shows on the network. Thanks for listening.
I mean, yes, this show has a cult following, and it has its audience. It's not necessarily remembered badly.
I think it deserves the audience too, don't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I can also see, why people wouldn't like it, because as we've just stated, 10 hours and these episodes are an hour long. 10 hours are just nothing because Patrick McGoohan was forced to, he didn't write all these episodes, obviously. He had other writers, but he still had to come up with these concepts and just, wing it and shoehorn them into a story that was already complete. And that's, he had to just destroy and break his own creation. And I don't blame him for not wanting to talk about it and being pissed off about it.
No, I don't blame him either. Again, if, and we have no reason to doubt any of these stories. If you're someone who creates something and effectively the control is taken out of your hands and chopped up and repurposed and turned into something else, chopped and remixed is what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I would be just as upset. Because then the reviews come back and people go, well, this isn't very good and this is incoherent, and you can just sit there and go, well, it wasn't originally.
Right.
But what choice did I have? Because the American audience has got involved.
They wanted to make money.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's show business for a reason. Unfortunately, that is the reality of the industry.
Yeah, that's absolutely what it is. You making the second money is involved and other people are involved, it becomes not your project anymore, because you have to start molding it and melding it into a sellable package, because if people are going to be putting money into something, they expect a return. So they're not, it sucks because, so many people in this industry, myself included, yourself included, people who, creative people who want to just make their stories, it's hard, because the second you get anybody's money involved, it's not yours anymore, and you're open to much more opinion. People are changing storylines. People are, rewriting scripts when you're not there. It can become wildly out of control, and the bottom line is that you still have to put your name on it. And that, to me, is I still, Patrick McGoohan still having to put his name on this, and, that's maybe why he wrote with some pen names for these episodes that were, the quote-unquote filler episodes. I think that, we can probably narrow it down based on the ones he wrote himself, and then ones he wrote under a pen name to kind of decide, which was filler and which wasn't.
Sure.
It's just having to put your name on it and be like, yes, this is the thing, but it's not at all the thing I wanted it to be at all.
And it's unfortunate, but at the same time, like, with an episode like this one, I don't know if this was part of those 7 episodes, but it's a good episode in its own right. And it feels kind of like the stopping post for good episodes, because what we're about to get next with the next episode is it's an honest to God travesty. So the next episode we're talking about is Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling, or on Amazon it's just known as Do Not Forsake Me. It aired January 7th, 1968. It's directed once again by Pat Jackson, written by Vincent Tilsley. It actually doesn't really star Patrick McGoohan. It does, but it doesn't. And number 2 is played by Clifford Evans, and then Nigel Stock plays number 6. And I say he plays number 6 because this whole episode revolves around the idea that before number 6 was taken away to the island, one of the missions he went on was to find a Dr. Seltzman, who he befriended. Dr. Seltzman apparently invented a way to switch consciousnesses from body to body. And so they end up switching number 6's consciousness with another person played by the Colonel, played by Nigel Stock, whose character is only referred to as the Colonel. And the entire episode is number 6 trying to figure out, while in the Colonel's body, how to get back to his own body at the village. It is a total mess and a waste of an episode.
Yep. So, interestingly enough, when I was reading about this one, like we said, Patrick McGoohan is pretty much not in this episode because he was off filming a movie with Rock Hudson called Ice Station Zebra, which evidently is on Amazon Prime. If you want to check it out, it's there. I put it on my watch list, but I'll probably never actually watch it. So he was filming this movie, so he was not there. So yeah, they had this episode written, and from what I understood as I was reading, there's some speculation that Patrick McGoohan's notes that he gave for this specific episode were either misunderstood or completely thrown out. And I guess the character of the Colonel is actually supposed, in the original script, which they're evidently, and they're out of print, you can't, unless you want to spend $300 on them now, but there are 2 volumes of the Prisoner original scripts, which I would actually like to read original scripts, because I guess this episode was vastly different in certain aspects. So I guess, like, the Colonel, it's speculated that in Patrick McGoohan's notes, the Colonel's actually supposed to be Saltzman, like it's supposed to be Colonel Saltzman, but then they somehow misunderstood that and just created I'm not really sure. It again, all of this is convoluted, and even when you're trying to read about it, it's still very convoluted.
Yeah, sure. No, I completely agree.
But yeah, the whole, I guess, original script for this was entirely rewritten without Patrick McGoohan there. So isn't that nice? Like it's just like slap in the face after slap in the face to, your Patrick McGoohan's creative integrity. And I'm not, as we've discussed on this show before, Patrick McGoohan kind of seems like he has his own issues, and he, was known for actually hitting people during the fighting scenes, and he was known to be a big drinker, and I guess he was like very devoutly Catholic, which explains, his hang-ups about promiscuity with James Bond and all of that. So I'm not saying that Patrick McGoohan would have been a treat to work with, but I don't know, to just rewrite somebody's script while they're like filming something else and have no ability to do anything about it is just so shitty.
Well, like you said, I mean, if he was already a pain to work with, this isn't making it any better. I mean, this is literally making it way worse.
It's like, here, we're going to rewrite your whole script, make this episode entirely a waste and incoherent, and yeah, fuck you, bye.
It doesn't help the situation.
No, and I mean, you would think that because, so we do learn a couple things, I guess, in this episode, because we learn that number 6 has a fiance.
I mean, there's a female love interest in this episode played by Xena Walker, who is clearly the woman that number 6 was going to get married to.
Yeah, because of this whole like switching consciousness thing, number 6 wakes up in the body of the Colonel.
Yeah, no. Unnamed character, the Colonel. He's just given the name of the Colonel.
Wakes up in the body of the Colonel. But is in Patrick McGoohan's house in London. So this is an episode that occurs outside of the village, supposedly. And yeah, we learn that he has a fiance. This is obviously more, intel on his own government, working against him. But we already know that. We know that. I don't need it to be reminded of it all the time, unless you're going to have some new developments in why or how they're, controlling him. I don't need to be reminded all the time.
But boy, do they do that every single time they're given the opportunity to.
Yep.
I think, one of the bigger disappointments with this episode, other than the fact that it's, again, convoluted, other than the fact that, again, it doesn't even have Patrick McGoohan in it, other than the fact that it feels like a waste of time because we don't really find anything out, is the idea that somehow they thought we would want an episode without Patrick McGoohan in it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not terribly, opposed to that, because I was kind of thinking, I was like, well, all right, it's going to be a different act, because I read about what the episode was going to be before, and I was like, okay, maybe it's a different actor, maybe there'll just be, some different energy, different whatever to the character and to the story, but this guy's boring as shit. Like, this guy is not, at least Patrick McGoohan is kind of cheeky and goofy to watch, but this guy is just standard British stiff upper lip type.
Well, and it's, I still can't fathom the idea of putting an episode together without your main character. I mean, it just, especially when this, especially when this show doesn't have that many episodes to begin with. And this episode, it's not like we find out anything new or exciting. We're literally just hearing reiterations of the same information we've heard before.
Yeah, it's all the same stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this episode is really pushing me in the direction of, I'm just disappointed. I mean, I'm disappointed, and the issue is the next couple episodes we're going to watch are very much in the same
absolutely
vein as this episode.
Yeah, and I will say that I am also disappointed because, again, I still stand on that, like, these could be interesting as, like, what little one-offs, It's like, basically, like, I picture this working as, like, the end of Clue, where it's like, this could have happened, and then you watch the episode, or this could have happened, and then you watch the episode. I think, it works better for me on an individual basis, and it is disappointing knowing that the show didn't necessarily need to happen this way, because it was just 7 episodes of probably really interesting high concept television that probably would have been even more well regarded in the long run than, just having a cult following.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, and I don't know what we're supposed to take away from the ending of this episode. He ends up getting this doctor back to the island and they switch bodies, but then the Colonel is lost to time forever. The consciousness of the Colonel is lost to time, and Seltzman changes into the Colonel's body, and number 6 goes back to his own body?
Right.
Okay, sure. And then it's like, now he can do his experiments. The end.
Number 6 goes back to his body, the Colonel goes into Seltzman's body and dies.
That's right.
And then Seltzman goes into the Colonel's body and escapes, and that makes number 2 angry because
of course it does.
Because he was, I guess, working with Patrick McGoohan, and he was supposed to be working against Patrick McGoohan, I think. I honestly don't know.
Convoluted.
Very.
Extremely and infuriatingly convoluted, and that is pretty much the biggest takeaway from these last 2 episodes that we watched, is just, boy, this couldn't be any more convoluted if it tried, because it's already pretty convoluted on its own.
Yep.
So it feels like a race to the bottom at this point. It really does. Like,
yeah, and I'm wondering how many of these last episodes were just filler, like in this order that we're watching. How many of these are just filler to the last designated episode? And I feel like that might be the case. I feel like we might just be watching. I think this could be the point in the order where they just like throw in the last like 4 that aren't really great.
Yeah, no, it would definitely seem that way, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of that, what are the next 2 episodes we're talking about?
The next 2 episodes we're talking about are episodes 14 and 15, Living in Harmony and The Girl Who Was Death.
I'm at this point, I'm just ready to get to the last 2 episodes to see where the show wants to go, because I'm probably going to be under the impression that these next 2 episodes are going to be wheel spinning.
Yeah, pretty much. I guess I still am interested in how it ends, just because
the negative reaction to it is so strong.
Right, which I mean, given the fact that this show is the way this show is, every episode and effectively being the same allegory every time, I want to know what makes people mad, because like if you're watching the same thing over and over again, I don't know, like I don't know. We'll see.
So when we're not here, Jess, where can people find you?
People can find me on Twitter at writer Jess Byard. You can find me on your show, Chris, The Culture Cast, twice a month, where we talk movies. Every month is a different theme. And you can find us on our other podcast, Scary Stories We Tell, where we encounter strange tales of the unexplained and cover true crime and horror culture that all kind of surrounds it. So if you're into that kind of thing, check us out there. What about you, Chris?
Casualty_Chris on Twitter is where you can find me. At One Season Show on Twitter is where you can find this show, and oneseasonshow.com is where you can find the rest of the episodes. We've done 2 seasons before this that had nothing to do with The Prisoner. So if you want to listen to us talk about something else, head on over there. Big thanks as always to Martinis and Mustaches. That's the music for this season of the One Season Show. And we'll catch you on the next episode. Be seeing you.